Hi everyone, welcome to the Swift Arcade. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. Thanks for joining us. We're in the middle of building the Starbucks iOS application here. And last episode we saw how to build this bit up here, something called the collapsible header. So as we move up and down, we can see that header collapses. We've also got a tab bar controller here with various navigation controllers embedded in it. And in this episode, we're going to take a look and see how we can go about building the tile system here so that as we scroll up and down, we can drop in different views and get a nice scrollable feel going for the application. So join us, come on in and learn all about scroll views, stack views, and tiles. When looking at how to build this, multiple designs went through my mind. I looked at this app and I said, could I do this in a table view? Or maybe a compositional view layout would be best. And after playing around with a couple alternatives, the one I actually went with was a scroll view, a stack view, and each of these tiles being its own view controller, something like this. So basically, as we go through and build this out, each one of these little things here is going to be its own tile. This is going to be a view controller. These tiles are going to sit within a stack view because stack views have some nice layout properties. And we're going to embed that stack view within a scroll view. So we get the scrolling functionality here. We let the stack view do its thing because these are all nice chunkable stacks. And each stack view is just going to contain a whole bunch of view controllers. That's how we can go about building this application. Now the thing to remember with scroll views, because I don't work a ton with just purely scroll views, I'm more used to using table view controllers and compositional views, is to really get the scroll view to work, you need an unbroken chain of constraints all the way through the elements of your scroll view, even if things have an intrinsic content size. Now when we start, it's going to be pretty easy for us because we're just going to make some simple plain tile views and we're going to stick those in a stack view, in a scroll view, and lay that out. But when we get into the layout later, I'm just going to go over this now and we'll do it later. The key to remembering how to lay out a scroll view is you've got two sets of constraints. One is you've got your scroll view and how it pins itself to the outer edges of the view, which we can go ahead and set up with AutoLayout as 4 constraints. But then you've got the thing inside the scroll view, and for us, that's going to be the stack view. So we're going to take our stack view, pin it inside the scroll view, and then there's one critical constraint we need at the very end. We want the stack view to be the same size as the scroll view's width, and that's what will enable it to scroll. So that's basically it. That's the architecture. That's what we're going to go for. Let's see now how to actually go do this in code. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just a little bit of housekeeping. If we're going to implement this kind of scrollable tile system, we don't actually need this table view controller that we added in the previous episode. So we're going to pull that out first. So let's head over to our home view controller. And wherever we see any table view code, let's just go ahead and remove that. So we won't actually need that table head. We'll just keep those tiles for now, even though we're going to come up with something different. Okay, where else do we have table view stuff? Here, we don't need to set constraints on a table view. We're going to keep our header view stuff. We don't need to add our table view to the view, so we can pull a U out. And let's just see, this looks like this is a leftover constraint. We don't need U anymore. We can remove the table view auto layout code. And of course, any extensions down here for the table view, we don't need these either. So let's just go ahead and get rid of that. And we'll even get rid of, we'll need this method, this scrolled view here. We're going to need this for later on with our actual scroll view, so we can hang on to that. But the rest of the stuff we can just get rid of and basically start here. So at this point now, we should just have our header view in the, that's the only thing we should have in this view controller. So if we just run this now, we'll lose the effect of being able to make the header collapse up and down because there's nothing to scroll. But we're at a good point now. We've got a clean canvas. Now we can come in here and take a look at how to set up our scroll view, our stack view, and the view controllers that are going to go inside it. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to do here is let's go ahead and create just a placeholder tile, something we can stick inside our stack view and ultimately our scroll view, just as a placeholder before we go ahead and create the actual tiles later on. So let's go over to the application. Let's go and click on our home directory here. And let's go Command N, and let's create a brand new class. Let's call it, let's just be a plain Swift file. And let's call it Tile View. So this is going to be a plain old view controller. Let's start by just importing UIKit. And let's call this class Tile View. This is going to extend UI View Controller. And all we're going to do in this is this is just a placeholder for us. We just want to have some with some height and some width. Let's just stick a label in it so we know what tile we're looking at. So let's go new UI label. And let's give this an initializer. I'd like to initialize this with just a name that we can put on our label. So I'm going to create an initializer here. It's going to take a text string just like this. And as we usually do with initializers, we always want to call super. In this case, as a view controller, the standard initializer I find I have to call most times when creating my own default or a new initializer is this nib with bundle, ID of nil nil. So we're just going to go ahead and call that. And then once we get that text, we're just going to set the label text to be the text that was passed in. That's all we're going to do there. And of course, we'll import this required initializer here. And then after that, all we need is basically a very simple layout. And we can do all that by setting up our viewDidLoad, which is kind of the standard method for initializing or setting up our view controller. So we're going to override viewDidLoad. We're going to call super viewDidLoad. And just to give our tile a little bit of color, I'm going to set its background here. So it's view background. Let's go with a nice system.yellow. So that'll make the background of our view yellow. And then here we just need to do our basic layout. So in here, let's just create a function called layout. This is where we'll do all our good auto layout stuff. And of course, what's the first thing we do with auto layout? We always set our flag to be false. Otherwise, auto layout will not work, which will be very frustrating. And then in here, basically, let's just go ahead and lay it out. Let's add this label to our subview. So it's now in there. We can now do our constraints on it. I'm going to go ahead and use that nice little snippet I have here for activating constraints. And here's where we can do our auto layout stuff. Now this auto layout is actually going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to copy it in and then show you what we're doing here. Because this is just a placeholder, kind of a little bulletin board tile for us, we're just going to take that label that we instantiated up here and center it in the tile. We're going to go center X, center Y. So that's going to put it right in the middle. I'm going to give it a height of 300 because everything needs a height to be scrollable. And the width I'm actually not going to worry about. It's going to expand by itself because we're going to put this in a stack view. So with just these three constraints, that will be enough for this view and this view controller to basically size itself and position when we put it in a stack view. So that's great. Let's just park this here for now. Let's go back now and see how to set up the scroll and the stack view. Okay, so let's go back to our home view controller and let's go and see how we can actually add this scroll and stack view to our view controller. Now this is really cool because I haven't worked a ton with just plain old scroll views. And I really found this a neat opportunity to actually see how they work. So let's just go ahead and start typing this out. Let's create a scroll view here, a plain old UI scroll view. And inside it, we are going to stick a plain old nice stack view. So we've got a scroll view, we got a stack view. Let's go ahead and adjust these tiles. These tiles now, right now they just contain the strings. These are just placeholders that we had in our table view before. Let's go ahead and make these tile views. So we're actually going to make this an array of tile view controllers, and this is what we're going to be sticking inside of our stack view. So let's just modify these slightly and go tile view. Just going to grab that bracket there, tile view. Let's just make all of these tile view controllers like this. give them some closing brackets like this. And now we've got a nice array, and you'll see shortly how we're going to use this, but this is just an array of tiles that's actually going to go inside our stack view. Okay, now down here, let's go ahead and continue laying this out. I'm going to add one more method here called, I'll put it right under the setup nav bar. I'll call it setup scroll view, and you'll see what we're going to do there, well, right now, I guess. I'm going to go ahead, and the one thing we need to do when we're setting ourselves up with the scroll view is just like the table view, we need to set ourselves up as the delegate. This is what's going to enable us to hook into our scroll view offset, which gives us that Y, which enables our collapsible header to expand and contract. Basically, this is how we do it. We're just going to hook ourselves in here, and then later on beneath, we'll implement the method and register ourselves up as a scroll view delegate. But we're just going to set that up here. And actually, why don't we just do that right now so we can get the compiler to stop complaining. Let's head down here and add an extension on our home view controller. This is how we can implement that protocol delegate. And then we should be able just to comment this in this method. This is the same method we had in our table view before. But now that we're here and we're extending the scroll view like this, we can go ahead and implement that method. This is the same callback that came to us through that UI table view controller we had previously. Only here we're explicitly hooking into the UIScrollView delegate, and this is what will enable us to continue doing our nice collapsible Y on our header here. Okay, so that's going to set up our scroll view, the delegate portion. Let's now go and see how to actually lay this out. So we've got our styling here. Let's go ahead and go in here and continue to do some other styling. Let's set our scroll view. Remember, we always have to set ourselves up for auto layout. So let's do that with our scroll view and our stack view here. So by setting those flags, we're ready for auto layout. And our scroll view is pretty much ready to go. There's not a lot we need to do with it, but our stack view, I just want to do a couple things on. One is I want to configure our stack view's axes to basically be vertical. So when you add these scroll views, they come out horizontal by default, meaning if we added things, they would just put them in a line like this. We want ours to be vertical. So I'm going to change the axes of the scroll view to be vertical. And we're also just going to give it a little bit of spacing. So there's a nice property on here called spacing. The default is 0, but we're going to give it a spacing of 8. That's just going to put a little bit of a separator between each element or tile in our stack view as we add them. Okay, so we've styled our stack view. Our scroll view didn't need anything. Let's go down here now and do the fun stuff. Let's lay this out. Now, this is the part I found most confusing about scroll views when I first got into them. How do you auto layout a scroll view? And let's just quickly go over this picture here and take a look. So basically, the trick to remembering styling scroll views is there's two sets of constraints. One is we want our scroll view to go to the edges of the view. So we're going to set up 4 constraints just like that, basically going top, leading, trailing, bottom for the scroll view itself. And then you have what's inside the scroll view. For us, that's going to be the stack view. We're just going to pin the stack view to the insides of the scroll view. So 2 sets of constraints here, one for the outer scroll view, one for the inner stack view. And then a final constraint, one that sets the stack view width to be the same as the scroll view width. If we do that, the scroll view now knows everything it needs to enable scrolling, to enable and handle contents going outside its bounds and making sure everything lays itself out nicely. That's basically the trick to working with scroll view. If you're working with scroll views and you ever see these kinds of warnings come up, constraints for scrollable content size are missing, it usually means there's some kind of unbroken chain of constraints inside your scroll view. We're not going to have that problem here because it's pretty easy what we're doing, but later on when we get into some really more complex subviews, this is a warning that will often pop up. Okay, so let's now go back to the code and lay this out. So for our scroll view and our stack view, we're just going to basically, I'm just going to copy this in and then we'll walk through this. Here's our scroll view. It's the one that's going to be pinned again to the outer edges of the view. So we're going to have a top anchor going just beneath our header view here. So that is this constraint right here. Then we're going to go leading, trailing in our scroll view, just pin it to the left and the right-hand sides. We're going to give it a little bit of padding, just padding of 8 points here. Then we're going to do a bottom constraint where we're going to say scroll view, pin yourself to the view safe area layout guide at the bottom here. So what visible area do we have at the bottom? That's using our safe area layout guide. And the stack view, here's the 4 constraints that are going to pin our stack view to the insides of our scroll view. Here we're going to go completely flush, top, leading, trailing, bottom, stack view to scroll view. And then here's that width constraint. We need this to make the stack view be the same width of the scroll view, and that's what will enable the scrolling up and down. Okay, we're almost there. We've got our scroll view defined. We've got our stack view laid out within it. The one thing we need to do now is get these tiles inside our stack view. So let's go back down to layout and let's just set that up. So let's remember what we're adding to the layout here. So to the view, we do want to add a subview of scroll view. That's going to be added to our parent view there. No problems there. The other thing we need to do though is we need to add our stack view to our scroll view. So here we're going to go add subview, stack view. This is what's going to stick our stack view inside the scroll view. And then here's a neat little bit of code. I'm just going to copy this in. And this is actually a really important little thing here. I like to explain and spend a minute just talking about what's going on here. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be adding view controllers, entire view controllers as tiles inside this stack view. Now in iOS with UIKit, that's a little bit tricky. There's a few things we need to consider. We're adding child view controllers to a parent view controller here. And whenever you do that, there's 3 things you need to do. One, you need to add the child to the parent, which we're going to do with this call here, add child. This tile here, we're going to be in a for loop. We're just going to loop through each of these view controllers we defined up here. So step 1 is to add the child to the parent. Step 2 is you need to add the child view to the parent. Now, normally we would just go tile.view, add to parent here, but in our case, we're adding it to the stack view. So we're going stack view, add arranged subview, because that's how you add things to a stack view. We're going to add that tile view, and then we need to call on the child.didMove to parent self. When we do all 3 of these things, that will hook up the children into the life cycle of the parent. So when things like view did load and view will appear are called, that's how our children get hooked into that life cycle. So this is a very common pattern you'll see when you're adding child view controllers to parents. It's something that wasn't immediately obvious to me when I first started working in iOS, but that's just kind of how it works. And the more you do these things, the easier it gets. So I just wanted to walk through and make sure you understood what was going on there. But now that we've got the scroll view, the stack view, the children are added, and we've got our tiles defined up here. We should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiles. Let's go ahead and go Command R and see what happens. Ta-da, there we go. Okay, let's take a look at what we've got here. Here's our tile, which we added as star balance, bonus stars. And look at this. We've got a nice buttery scroll that goes up and down. Our header is still collapsible. That's nice. We can still move that up and down. So we're still connected into the Y callback of the scroll view delegate. And this is great. This is a really good beginning for us now. Now, hey, the architecture's done. All we need to do now is fill in these tiles. And we're set up really nicely now for going in there and doing some really cool stuff and building and filling out the rest of the home controller here. And in the next episode, we will take a look and see how we can do that. Okay, so just a quick recap on what we did here. We took our app and we added a scroll view with an embedded stack view containing view controllers set up as child view controllers added into this overall parent. And at this point, we have a nice scrollable tile system here that we can go in and start further fleshing out our application. Okay, hope that was useful. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Come back next time and we'll see how we can actually start building and filling out some of these tiles. Okay, take care. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.